The wind had teeth that night, cutting across the open plains and slamming into the cabin like it meant to tear it from the earth. The cowboy had just banked the fire when the knock came, soft, almost lost beneath the storm, but deliberate. No drifter knocked like that in weather like this. He lifted the lantern, heart steady but alert, and pulled the door open against the wind. Snow rushed inside first, then a woman. She stood straight despite the cold, wrapped in a worn Apache shawl, stitched and restitched until the original pattern was nearly gone. Her face was hollow from hunger, but her eyes were sharp, proud, refusing to bow. One hand gripped the doorframe to keep from swaying. Behind her, half hidden by the storm, was a little girl clutching her mother's skirt. Lips blue, eyes too old for her small face. "Please," the woman said, her voice rough but controlled. "Hire me for one night. Any work you have. I can clean, cook, mend, watch your horses. My daughter is very hungry." The cowboy didn't answer right away. He'd heard lies before, smooth ones, desperate ones, but this wasn't that. There was no performance here, no practiced tears, just truth laid bare in the snow. He noticed how the woman didn't push the child forward, didn't use her as leverage. The girl stood silent, as if she had learned long ago not to ask for mercy. "How long since she ate?" he asked. The woman hesitated only a second. "Yesterday morning." That was enough. He stepped aside and held the door wider. "Come in," he said. "Both of you, before the cold finishes what it started." The girl flinched at the warmth, like an animal unsure if a hand meant kindness or harm. The woman guided her inside, never taking her eyes off the man until the door closed and the storm was shut out. Snow melted onto the rough wooden floor as the heat crept back into their bones. The cowboy set another log on the fire and poured water into a pot without being asked. "You can work tomorrow," he said quietly. "Tonight you eat." The woman nodded once, not grateful, not submissive, just accepting the fragile gift of survival. Outside, the wind screamed on, angry it had lost its claim. Inside the cabin, for the first time that night, the cold no longer ruled. Firelight filled the cabin with slow-moving shadows as the girl finished her bowl, scraping the last drops of stew with careful determination. She didn't rush, didn't waste a single bite, eating like someone who understood hunger as a memory that never quite left. The cowboy watched from his chair near the hearth, saying nothing, letting the silence do its work. The widow stood at the table, already wiping it clean, her movements efficient, almost automatic, as if stillness itself made her uneasy. "You can rest," he said at last. "There's time for work tomorrow." She shook her head gently. "Rest comes after usefulness." He didn't argue. Instead, he fetched a needle and thread and set them down. Without being asked, she picked them up and began mending a tear in his coat, fingers moving with practiced speed. The fire cracked softly, the only sound between them for a long while. "Your husband?" the cowboy asked, not looking at her. "Gone," she replied. No bitterness, no softness, just a fact. The fever took him first. Winter took the rest. Horses, shelter, food. The land is not kind to widows. He nodded. He'd buried men who were stronger than the season, men who thought pride alone could keep them warm. "You didn't come here to beg," he said. "No," she answered. "I came to trade." The girl had curled up near the fire, eyelids heavy, her small hands wrapped around an empty bowl as if it still held warmth. The cowboy stood and laid a folded blanket beside her, careful not to wake her. When he turned back, the widow was watching him closely. "She sleeps by the fire," he said firmly. "That's not something we discuss." For the first time, her shoulders lowered, just a fraction. "Then you are not the man I feared," she said. He met her gaze. "And you're not what this land keeps trying to turn you into." Later, as the fire burned lower, he placed bread and dried meat into a small sack. "For the morning," he said, "in case you decide not to stay." She hesitated before taking it, pride warring with necessity. Finally, she accepted it with a nod. "You have shown fairness," she said. "That is rarer than kindness." The wind eased outside, and the cabin settled into a fragile peace. Two strangers shared the fire, not as savior and saved, but as survivors recognizing each other in the quiet glow of honesty. Morning arrived softly, as if the night had worn itself out. Pale light slipped through the small window, settling over the cabin and revealing a world scrubbed clean by snow. The storm had passed, but winter still ruled everything it touched. The cowboy was already awake, sitting at the table with a tin cup of coffee, when he heard movement near the fire. The girl stirred first, blinking in confusion before the warmth returned to her eyes. She sat up slowly, clutching the blanket as if afraid it might be taken away. The widow rose soon after, smoothing her shawl, her posture straight, despite the hard floor and harder months behind her. She looked around the cabin, memorizing it, the way people do when they don't know if they'll ever see a place again. Breakfast was simple: bread, a little meat, hot water warmed enough to chase the cold from their throats. The girl ate more freely now, curiosity replacing fear. She watched the cowboy, as if trying to understand what kind of man let strangers stay without demanding more than honesty. When the meal was done, the widow tied the small sack he had given her and lifted it over her shoulder. "We should go," she said quietly. "The day is short." He stood, uneasy with the idea of watching them walk back into the white emptiness. "You don't have to," he said. "There's work here. Fences to mend, horses to tend. Cooking if you want it. I pay fair and I don't count nights as debts." She studied him carefully, weighing the words, searching for hooks hidden beneath them. "I won't be owned," she said. "I wouldn't know how," he replied. "I'm just trying to keep this place alive." "Looks like you're doing the same." The girl reached for her mother's hand, tugging gently, eyes drifting toward the fire, the table, the solid walls. The widow followed her gaze, and something in her expression softened, not into weakness but into hope, thin and dangerous, yet impossible to ignore. "My daughter needs safety," she said. "So do I," he answered. "This land gets lonely. Lonely makes people careless." Silence settled, not heavy, not strained. At last the widow nodded once, a decision made without ceremony. She untied the sack and set it back on the table. "Then we stay," she said. "For now." Outside the sun climbed higher, cold but steady. Inside the cabin, 3 lives stood at the edge of something new, not a promise, not a miracle but a chance. And for people who had lost nearly everything, that was enough to begin.